Sure people will continue to join. All right, thank you. It looks like we have a good group here. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Karen McCrae. I am Senior Director of the Institute Program at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and we are here this afternoon to hear from our speaker, Amy Hager, IOM CAE, CEO of Amy Hager Solutions, LLC. Amy has a background in marketing, communications, engagement, community development, and organizational growth. In 2006, she started as a member volunteer at her local chamber, and her passion grew into a career with a variety of national associations, state chamber, and tourism organizations. Amy is also the co-founder of Association Rockstars, an online interview series focusing on the unsung superheroes of the association and chamber world. When she's not working with her nonprofit clients, speaking at conferences, or coaching professionals, you can find her out and about, either on her boat, at a winery, or exploring all over the world. I have had the pleasure of knowing Amy for almost 10 years as she moved from an Institute attendee to a graduate, to a class advisor, to a member of the Northeast Board of Regents, and now to a member of our Institute faculty. We are so excited to have her with us this afternoon. You're in for a real treat. So Amy, please take it away.
Thanks, Karen. Definitely. And I'm really excited for all of you to join me today. And know that if you have any questions while we're going through the presentation, please utilize that chat feature. I want to make sure that you get any questions on your heart answered while we're here today. And we can dive in deeper if we need to and really explore more. But as Karen said, I've been kind of floating around in this space of chambers and associations since I became a member of my local chamber in 2006. And when we moved to DC, I realized it was the mecca of the association world. And I wanted to get my IOM because I knew it was important to continue my education, but also I was an executive director in a team of one at the time. So really, the U.S. Chamber Foundation and Institute and everybody here has been part of my peer group for a while. So I'm super excited for you all to be here. I hear that there's an echo. Can anybody else confirm or deny? Is there an echo in our audio today? Just want to make sure that you can hear me clear. No echo for you. Okay, good stuff. Thank you for confirming that. Oh, make sure that your mics are on mute so that way you may not get the echo. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in and let's first do a little myth busting. A lot of times when we talk about our value propositions, people are like, oh, it's my mission. It's the vision of our organization. And really, it's not. They're two very, very separate things. And I really thought Lowell Applebaum, who is also a faculty here at Institute, he also has started Association Rockstars with Me, which is an interview series where we interview kind of those unsung CEOs in different pockets of the world and get their stories, because I think it's important for us to share our stories as executives and CEOs and leaders. One, for those who are coming into the chamber and association space to hear the footsteps that we've taken, but also I feel like we get so many ideas from sharing our stories. So oh, good. You were logged in twice. Yay, I'm so glad the echo's gone. So anyways, Lowell has really broken this down pretty easily, where a mission and a vision is going to be your longer term goals, right? These are the things that really make your organization unique. And your mission is how to get to those visions. Our value proposition is going to be really those benefits of your target audience, so members, donors, sponsors, and really supporting what's going on right now in your industry and in your world. And so it's kind of answering that question of what's in it for me, right? And it's also not just a marketing tool. Like, these are ways that you can talk about your association or chamber, but we've got to think a little broader in how we're bringing people together for movements. And so as we kind of think of how does all of this play together? And again, distinguishing the difference before we dive too deeply. Your value propositions are going to change regularly to meet the members' needs right now. And so with the pandemic and everything that's changed over the last couple years, if you haven't visited value propositions, now would probably be a really good time. Your mission and your vision of your organization probably isn't going to change all too terribly often. And so when you think about that longer term goal of the mission and vision, your value propositions, value statements should really support that and take you along that journey. And so when we think about creating these value propositions, and sometimes people call them, messaging. If you're in the marketing world and you're working on messaging, this is kind of also a great tie to what we're talking about today. And so when we think about the 3 qualities of your value propositions, we want to make sure that we're focusing on those benefits and outcomes. So focus on the end results of really being engaged and being a part of your chamber and your organization. We want to make sure that we're not vague. And these don't need to be just catchy marketing slogans. And so I want to dive in a little bit deeper on these a little bit so that way you can get some better ideas of what value propositions could be at your organization. When you're thinking about your end result, your value proposition should really define why you're here, why the members are here, and really what you as an organization are working to solve. So those really current, relevant industry pains, like when I ask you the question, what are you improving in the industry, in their industry, or in their lives? Because I know some of the organizations here focus more on individuals and their, career or their personal development instead of a business community or a larger association. So when you really boil it down, what are you improving in the industry, in their lives? And you're really, again, answering, why should I join this movement? Why should I join this mission? And it's going to be different for member types, and we'll dive in a little bit more on audience later, but really think through the end result. So is it when they join your organization, if you're a certification organization, they get their certificate in your industry and that advances their career? Is it when they join your chamber, they're getting exposures to customers or getting opportunities to build deeper relationships in the community? So really think about that end result of why someone should join your organization and how it's really fulfilling a specific pain point that they need you to fulfill. The other big thing that we tend to do is we be really, really vague, and maybe we're using jargon. And so when I say, oh, join ABC Association or Chamber of ABC City because we're helping to build a better world, that's just too pie in the sky, way too vague. And really, how do you measure that you're building a better world, right? So it's a little bit unmeasurable. So you want to be able to go back and tie things directly to these value propositions and what you're doing. And the other thing to think about is, legislative affairs is usually a department that we have in our organizations. That's also really, really vague. And so how can you even call the interactions with the different, employees and staff on your team or volunteers or committee? How can we even name those a little bit more targeted so it's not so vague, and using really that language that our members will understand and how they converse and talk in their day to day. The last quality that I really want to dive into is this idea that value propositions are your marketing campaign should be super duper catchy and have to be really, really memorable. And while it's helpful, that shouldn't be how you lead with building value propositions. And so it's really important to have substance to what you're creating in value propositions. And again, not be vague and pie in the sky and building a better world. And so it does not need to be catchy. And really, if you thought about it, it needs to be more than just a catchy slogan that someone's going to remember. So I want to dive in a little bit more about actually redefining and defining value propositions. If you've never gone through and created value propositions of your organization, it's really great to do. And some organizations are doing them on a yearly basis, maybe like their yearly kind of end of the year recap, looking at what's coming forward next year with the shifts and changes that we've had in the pandemic, having check-ins every 6 months just to make sure that we're on the right track and we're actually focusing on the pain points of the members. And so when we're thinking about really defining these propositions, there's a few other things outside of these questions to ask that I want to make sure that I talk about. So when you are asking questions, we need to think about the right questions to be asking our members and our donors and our sponsors to really peel back the layers of those onions of why being a part of your organization is important and how it's helping them, and making that emotional connection. A lot of times we just talk about those transactional things, those warm, fluffy, like feeling things. Oh, we're networking, we're building a better world. Again, let's really talk into the emotion of why someone is joining your organization. And we have to make sure that we're listening and really hearing our people out, which I know is very hard because you probably have hundreds and hundreds of members who are talking at you all the time. And so when you're thinking about going through this journey, think about how you can create pods of groups so that you can really focus and listen and hear them say the words and describe what's going on, because you want to take those phrases and that messaging and utilize it, then building out those value propositions. And then, this is a great opportunity. I think one thing that we're all very good at in the association and chamber space is really we come up with innovative solutions. How a lot of you pivoted and adjusted and changed during the pandemic, like gold stars all around, because a lot of you have done some amazing things. And so give yourself a pat on the back and realize that's probably one of your superpowers as a nonprofit association chamber person, right? We really, really can be very innovative. And so we're creating value for our members, and we really want to make sure that we're engaging with them more on a deeper level than just that transactional level. So let's talk a little bit about these questions. The first one that I feel like we fall into the trap too often is really being that jack of all trades. You want to be everything to all of your members, and that's really, really hard to actually do. And it's even harder to market and harder to connect and harder to communicate. So really, if we took that step back and asked ourselves, what is the main benefit that you're providing for your organization, your members? What is that end result that we get consistently over and over and over with our interactions with members? And as we talk about like getting away from that jack of all trades, how I like to really put this together is, what is the main benefit? So let's take a marketing organization, for example. And let's say, right now, because we are still a lot of virtual, people are struggling with putting together videos and promoting their businesses, giving that video tour or giving a short video talk or tip. And so if you were doing training for marketing professionals on creating videos, that's a really, really niche, unique thing and a pain point that they need right now. This may not be as much of a pain point in 2 years. It probably wasn't as much of a pain point 10 years ago, right? But when we think about the here and now, this is a pain point that people are feeling and something that your organization does really well. And so when we think about the main benefit of providing, our organization provides training to marketing professionals on creating videos, as the example. the main benefit is you're providing a strategy and a skill set to create amazing videos to promote their business and attract their ideal clients or customers. That sub benefit may be, well, at the training, you are getting to interact with others from all over the world because we're probably doing this, virtually, or if it's in person together. And so that's the sub benefit. You're getting fresh ideas on how to promote your business. You're getting exposure to new technologies and tools. But if we go down that rabbit hole of the sub benefits while we're trying to promote the main benefit, it just ends up being too noisy. And so it's so easy for you to say that one main benefit and know that those sub benefits will always still be there. And yeah, people are going to ask about them, but you have to pick something to lead with. So really, really focus on that lead benefit. Another thing that I really want to think through is your ideal audience. Boy, oh boy, do you all have a lot of audiences, from city councils to donors to sponsors to members to prospective members. And then when you look at your membership, is it CEOs? Is it young professionals? Is it project managers? Is it business owners? Is it the HR person, right? There's so many different audiences that you could potentially be serving. But when you think about what your organization does really, really well and get out of that jack of all trades, we're going to serve them all, and really think about your key ideal audiences. Who are those people? And know that the one size fits all mentality isn't working. And so even though a CEO might value a young professionals network, and the young professional is going to value that network, the way you communicate it to them is going to be different. So if we think about the CEO would want the organization to join and the young professionals to take part in the young professionals networks because, let's say, the young professionals are getting that video training to create awesome videos to attract ideal clients. So you want to make sure that you're talking through the value of providing training for young professionals, providing skills so that they can then do more for your company or organization. While the young professional, it's probably going to be similar, right? They want to have more skills. They want to have more marketable skills. They're wanting to learn new things. And so tiny little tweaks in the messaging, and then segmenting how you speak to a CEO by the email, how you speak to your young professionals by email, maybe what you're putting out on your social channels is more targeted to a young professional because you've looked at your analytics and the younger 20 to 30-year-old generation is following you on Instagram and not so much, so you don't have to worry about having to speak to the CEO there because the CEO isn't there. The CEO's opening your emails instead. So think about your ideal audiences, and you want to make sure that you just have, you have your one value proposition, but maybe the tweaking to the messaging is going to be a little bit different for the audience that you're trying to speak to. And again, make sure you're fulfilling all the audience's need, right? So if you want to, in the chat, I would be curious, what is the ideal audience for you at your organization when you think about providing training, whether the training is in person or virtually? Like, if you are providing training, who is your ideal audience? Feel free to put that in the chat because I would love to see the difference of what everybody puts and the similarities, because I know there's also going to be similarities to those of you attending today. So feel free, toss it in the chat. Some ideas are obviously your members, and then breaking them down into different types: CEOs, young professionals, first-year members, new business owner members, and then obviously those that are really involved, your committee members, your board members, right? Those are the ones who are kind of boots on the ground with you and probably know the most about your organization. And sometimes they need a different message communicated to them because that value connection is different. Kelly, good one. Small businesses, owners, any age, right? They're all small businesses, maybe like 5 employees or less, not those major corporation. Ooh, I like that, Alan. Automotive title clerks and dealer principals. Very, very wide perspectives. Yes. So when we think about then the next group that we really focus on a lot about is like our sponsors and our exhibitors. If we have trade shows or we have, community events where we have those exhibitors, sometimes an exhibitor is also a member, right? But really, what is the value that they're getting by working with your organization? What problem are you solving? Sometimes it is making that connection, that person-person connection at an event. Maybe sometimes it's the sponsor really wants to be established as an expert in the industry so that they can serve the members. Very, very cool. So I love seeing what your guys' chats are and answers are and how it's very different. Very, very different. I'm not sure if many of you on our call today have chapters, but don't forget about your chapters. They're members too. And some of the relationships, I know chapters are paying into the national organizations and things along those lines, but really, really think through like what is going to be a value proposition that you would communicate to a chapter, and how is that going to be different than your members, your sponsors, or your donors? So those ideal audiences are really, really key. Slicing, dicing, niching down, and really getting a solid message to them is very important. Jared, I was waiting for somebody to say it. Prospective members definitely need to be a different category. They may want to hear some of the similar things that your current members hear, but really, again, small little tweaks, small little call outs. The call to action is going to be a little bit different of a prospective member. And then even when you think about your current membership, like again, Jared, good point, retaining members and having a little bit different of a message for them. And so again, it can't be one message for all. It can't be pie in the sky. And we really want to make sure that there's substance. And the last thing that I really want to focus on is like, what is that problem that you're really, really solving for your ideal audience? And there's a couple categories that I want to touch on, right? Like you have your programs and your offerings. And when you think about how you're sending email messages or posting on social media, a lot of us want people to just enroll or just buy on from the marketing, from the messaging. But a lot of times it comes back down to that human connection and emotion. And so if you do have members who are frequently opening things and clicking things, but they're not purchasing, or someone who is often commenting on your social media, but they're not engaging, it may be worth that one-on-one reach out to talk to them and to see, well, one, why are they clicking and engaging? But two, why are they not joining, or why are they not purchasing? And sometimes that can help you as you build your value propositions and your messaging around them. Making sure that, you think through, again, the emotion. How is someone going to feel after they've engaged with you? Are they going to feel like they're just one in a million, or is the message really speaking to that person and what's going on in their world, that pain point? And when you focus on the benefit to the person, not the feature, I really think that is super key. And a lot of times we get stuck on the features. There's, congruent breakout sessions while having keynotes from someone around the world. Like, I think the easiest way for me to explain it is like, I want an ooey gooey, lovely, fresh cookie right out of the oven. I don't need the recipe for it. And so when you talk about that cookie and how delicious and ooey and gooey and warm it's going to be because it's fresh out of the oven, not the fact that it has sugar or eggs or flour or whatever. Talk about really that connection emotionally to the benefits. And just remember, you can't be everything to everyone, but having that deeper connection, you all know referrals are key. And so when you're able to really have that deep connection with someone and utilize them then later on for referrals together because they had a great experience at your organization, I think that's one other component that we really need to pull back in. And especially since a lot of us are virtual right now, and this human to human connection just is not happening like it used to be. And so I want to move on next to, really figuring out, what do your members value? And sometimes it's silly. People are like, we're association and chambers. We know what our members value. And I think it really is a good time to take a pause and ask. And so a few different ways to ask, and I don't think that you can just do one of these ways. I think you do need to have like a strategy where you're getting them engaged in multiple levels. Is if you have like an online member community. So if you're using like a higher logic product or like Rossio or anything along those lines, where your members are kind of engaging, asking questions, and it's, that form kind of discussion. Don't be scared to go out there and ask a question and ask, what is a pain point right now that you're feeling that you think our organization should be helping you with? And kind of see what you get and see, are you actually fulfilling what they need right now? Again, value propositions change. It's not set in stone. It's not something you have to do forever. And I know you have to look at resources to create programs and offerings and things along those lines, but making sure that you really ask and you get the people engaged. And sometimes it's even nice to have a member ask on the staff's behalf. And so if you do have a communications or online community or a membership community or a membership committee, there we go. Sometimes asking one of your volunteers to ask these questions is helpful. Another really great tool is an online survey tool, but we all know sometimes the survey just does not get completed. And so is it the survey is getting completed because someone's calling out and reaching out and asking those questions over the phone? It doesn't always have to just be online. Is it also something that you make available to non-members to kind of see where they're at? Can you post it on your social media? Can you put it out in email? How broad of a net can you cast when getting this survey out to really kind of see what's going on? But also, I love the town hall concept. I loved when we could do them in person, and since we can't, we do them a little bit more virtually now. But using the technology and tools to really hear from your members and to talk through. And I think if you go at it with the approach of, you really want to look at the value propositions of what your organization is providing for them. You really want to be innovative and to think next level. I know it's scary sometimes to ask members and they attacked and it's crazy and you get drained from it. But an open conversation sometimes in a virtual platform where you are having the hand raised, there is time limits and things along those lines, I've seen work really, really well, especially right now. And especially making sure you have those members who maybe voices you haven't heard before. And so if there is a way for you to check and see your more under-engaged members and to make a personal reach out. And I love when it's a member to member reach out or even a CEO to member reach out if you're a smaller organization saying, hey, Jared, you're in the chat, so gonna call you. Hey, Jared, I see that you're in our organization. It's been a while since we've heard from you. Would you like to come to this virtual town hall? Simple phone call, sometimes a voice audio message like in Facebook Messenger, if you're using Messenger to engage with your members, or even LinkedIn. So really being able to call someone out and say, hey, I would love for you to be here. We want your opinion. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. The last is focus groups. And I love to try to work in parallel with focus groups. So if you already have a committee getting together, if you already have groups gathering for legislative issues, for education and certification evaluations and things along those lines, could you tack on a couple questions at the end or at the beginning or even over the lunch break that maybe is a little bit more casual than the work that focus group is there to do? and ask them questions and ask them the questions that are sitting on your heart as association and staff of what are the pain points? What could we be doing that we're not doing? And what are the major problems in the industry that we should be focusing on or that we should be talking about in a different way? And it's not always that you need to like do something brand new and different. But again, the way people and the way your members are talking about their pain points and issues have really, really changed. And so just asking them so that you can put a little refresh on the value propositions that you're talking through now with your members and to really help serve them in a stronger, better way. So it doesn't have to be the focus group needs to come together. It doesn't have to be this needs to be a value proposition focus group. Are there already committees and groups meeting that you could add a little bit of time while they're together to really see what's going on in their world and have conversations about it? Testing. Oh, do I love testing. So once you've been able to kind of put together the phrasing, put together the thoughts, it makes sense to test these value propositions. And one way that I love doing it is through email A/B testing. I love using a subject line to test something. And so if you have a value proposition to one ideal audience, but you're not for sure on the wording, do an A/B test with your emails. And some platforms provide where you do an A/B test, let's say it's to 20% of your email list. 10% gets this, 10% gets this. And then after a 48-hour period, whatever email got the most clicks or the most opens, usually you get to decide. Then the rest gets the other one, gets the one that wins. Sometimes that's a great way to really test out the language of your value propositions. You can also go back to your community. If you have one of those online communities, really do a poll. Give 3 or 4 messages and have your members vote. What really connects with you? What do you think really describes what we do for you? And ask those questions. And again, getting them engaged and really coming up with solutions and messaging together, but not asking them to sit there and write it out to be interviewed, right? You're already just kind of just taking the pulse. And so for those of you, on the chat today, how are you guys testing? Are you testing different messaging and phrasing with your members? If so, can you share in the chat how you're testing things and if it's different from the A/B test in an email or creating the online community poll? I would love to hear other ways that you all are testing. And it may not necessarily be a value proposition that you're testing. It may be just general marketing messaging or anything along those lines. But really sharing how you're testing with your members to get a sense of, all right, here's 2 things or here's 3 things. What do y'all think? So feel free to put that in the chat. We'll go ahead and let anybody put those in the chat and then we'll come back to them. The last part really in all of this is now you've created these value propositions. You've been able to kind of test and see what's going on and what really sticks and resonates with your members. How the heck do you get this message out there and where do you use it is a great question. So a lot of people end up creating these almost like missions and visions and sometimes strategic plans. They create these and then they sit them on the shelf and they don't ever see them again. And so you want to make sure that it's really tied into everything that's going out in your organization. A lot of times you can take banners with the actual value propositions and put them on the different social channels based off of the ideal audience, or put a banner on the top of the newsletter or the email that's going out to the ideal audience that you're speaking to. And so I want to dive in a little bit deeper on how to use your new value propositions or reworked value propositions in these 5 ways. So let's start with your website. And I have pulled a lot of this from an ebook that I've written recently with Higher Logic. And so there is the resources so that you can download it and really dive in a lot deeper on all of this. But really, I think the website is a great place to rotate value propositions because all of your members are going there. If there are sections of your website where you know ideal audience tends to hang out, make sure that you have the value proposition on that page. It can be sometimes a pulled quote. It sometimes can be something that's standing out a little bit more, maybe in a header format. And so really being able to utilize that language on your website, I think is key. And one trick that I really, really like is instead of using the sign up for our newsletter, try to put something like sign up for updates about who your organization helps or what the main focus is on the industry. Like the newsletter, again, is the recipe in the cookie recipe. It's not the ooey gooey delicious cookie that you're going to take a bite out of. So really think about how you can kind of rephrase and reword what's going on your website to be more engaging. So it's not just all of these things that you get, right? There's another great example here on the screen. Instead of using, I'd like to give a one-time gift, maybe donate to who your organization helps. Small businesses in our community, kids going to the local community college, like whatever the actual thing is that you're raising, like speak to it. And having your calls to action be really, really targeted to your ideal audience, talking about your value propositions is really, really key. Again, we're getting away from those pie in the sky conversations and spraying, praying everything to everyone and really focusing and honing it down. Okay, so the next one, I got to get these slides moved. Not sure if I love this Teams platform, but we're working with it. So when you're utilizing email, again, you have like your newsletters. I know somebody mentioned about like making sure you're onboarding your members and they're utilizing their benefits. So onboarding campaigns, recruitment campaigns, and then your automation campaigns. And that may be kind of like a longer engagement series for your members. But really thinking through like, again, how can you be more specific? How can you talk about the benefit instead of just calling it a newsletter? And think through, again, what is the benefit of the action that this group within your organization is taking? And I think the example here is instead of your legislative affairs and newsletter, legislative affairs doesn't mean anything to some people unless they're like uber involved and really understand it. It sometimes is more confusing than not. And so what are you doing in the legislative department? You're building better policy for your members, your industry, your country, if you happen to be a national organization. But again, that's a little bit too vague. And so really think about what you're naming your newsletters, and is that going to be the key to why someone reads it? And then I love the recruitment campaigns, and instead of just a join now, like answer the question to why they should join and make sure that you're putting that value proposition statement like within the join now button. It doesn't just have to be join now. You want to create excitement around the movement and the mission that you guys are really trying to achieve. And so try going away from join now and see if you can come clearer with an actionable button for someone to click when they join your organization, your recruitment campaigns. A little bit deeper on onboarding campaigns. Again, someone had mentioned it, of making sure that you're able to explain the benefits that they're getting, break it down. And I think that goes more into automation flows too. If people are clicking in specific areas of your website and getting messages around those areas, if they are interested in what you're doing on the advocacy side or within legislation, because that's a hot season right now, or if they're interested in what you're providing for certification, if they're interested in the actual training that your organization is providing, if there are areas within your website that you can attach some automated emails to it based on the actions that they've taken with you. It's a really, really great way to, again, reuse those value propositions and get that message out there more and more. So board members and committee members, really, I think a lot of times, especially with our board meetings and with the hustle and bustle and everything that we've had to go through in the last couple of years, we kind of forget to reiterate what we are doing as an organization. And so when you use your value propositions as the outline for talking points for your board members, so when they go speak to a new member or a prospect member, they are able to speak in similar language. And I think it is important for them to tie their personal stories as they're talking to prospects. But hopefully then all those personal stories that they're telling is really focused on like that one value proposition. And so if we went back to the earlier example of teaching marketing professionals how to create videos, they then could speak to how, if it wasn't them particularly who learned how to do the video, but someone on their team, how that really positively impacted their business, creating new clients and everything along those lines. But tying that personal story to a value proposition when your members going out to recruit, when your board members are going out to recruit members, I think is really key. But even like when they're needing to speak to the media and such, and I've got some tips coming up with that as well, you want to make sure that you're on message and that they stay on message and they talk about the focus of what your organization is actually doing. These value propositions being in front of them often and whenever they're having conversations is a great way to kind of tie everything together. And so what I like to do with my board meetings is I would kick off the board meeting reminding them what our mission and vision is and going through our top value propositions. And then as we're going through our actual meeting in the agenda, I will put what value proposition this section of our meeting is tied to, because we've got to make these connections. Otherwise, these value propositions get created and nothing actually ever goes anywhere with them. But again, it's then driving home what your organization is really focused on and what you're really, really doing. And so I think putting together talking points for your board members and committee members, and then tying it together in agendas and having that visual reminder at the beginning of every meeting. And I've had board members where they're like, this is boring. Why do you kick the first 3 to 4 minutes off of each meeting reminding us about this stuff? Well, usually that's a board member who's been a member for about a bagillion years. And so that's why it's boring to them, because they've been through this too many times. You can't forget about those new board members who just came on, those who are new to your industry, new to your organization. We want this to be ingrained in their brain as well. And so making sure that you honor that time and providing that knowledge to them. I think social, there we go, media is another great place for value propositions. As we have banners on our different social media pages, value propositions can go there. When we're lacking creative content, you can always put a value proposition out there with a pretty little background. Really, these value propositions, there's not a place that they can't go. But again, like I said earlier, if you know that your followers on Instagram are an age demographic or a specific member type demographic, you want to make sure that the value proposition that you're putting out to them actually fits on that platform, right? So you're not going to put something out to your CEOs on Instagram if you have like 0 CEOs following you. So your strategy across platforms changes based off of the audience, and then your value proposition is based off of that audience. So making sure that you make that tie. And I think by establishing a calendar for your organization is a really, really great way to do this. And one way that I've been able to do this is we have a Google Calendar that is just the content calendar. And in that content calendar, it is the social media posts that we'll be making. In the nonprofit that I'm working with, they're a sustainable travel education organization. Their goal is to really provide a 10-week certification for students who will be either doing a gap year travel or travel abroad in college. And so we know that they follow us really heavy on Twitter, on Instagram, and a little bit on YouTube. Those students who are taking our certification are not following us on LinkedIn. And so really our LinkedIn strategy is to talk to those who are going to be donors, who will be sponsors, or even people who are going to be our faculty at these certification offerings. And so when you go to our LinkedIn, it's 2 posts usually a week. And then the other posts on the other channels are really focusing on our upcoming certification, our upcoming courses and modules and everything along those lines. The banners have the same background image, but the words on those banners on the pages are a little bit different because, again, our ideal audience on LinkedIn is going to be those donors and faculty, and our ideal audience on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter tend to be the college students who are taking our courses. And so making sure that you really, really change those up based on what this social media is and who the ideal audience is. So then creating talking points using your value propositions for when you have media interviews. And so these are, your CEO should know them and should have them, all the way down to any member who would ever be speaking on your organization's behalf if that ever happens in your community. And so if you are connecting members, and this is maybe something that you offer at your organization, I know it is at some, where the whole goal of maybe our PR department is to really get our members' PR and connect it to their local media. And so having this as a one sheet for talking points for that member, and then helping them again tie their story to that value proposition of what your organization is doing, like ties it all together. Otherwise, you get a lot of personal story about that member, and your organization is really left out on the coverage. And so it's like, well, yeah, it's great that the PR department got the member, the interview or whatever it may be, but is it really fulfilling the full need of your organization? And so when I'm creating talking points for my organization, I just taught this at our Winter Institute in Tucson. The session at Tucson, at Winter, or at any institute, I guess, is called Communicating Through the Media. You do want to make sure that you're prioritizing one thing and a key takeaway, just like your value propositions. You want to make sure that you ask for questions ahead of time. It never hurts to ask whoever's doing the interview, what are the questions? And it also doesn't hurt to help them create the questions too. So I think when you work together to get a better story, it's good for you, it's good for the member, it's good for the newspaper or the TV outlet. Want to make sure that you're, again, tying emotion to the answers that you're giving and really tapping into that storytelling feature and staying focused and concise. So I wanted to wrap up our time together today with giving you guys just a few more resources. And I know these are in the resources link that was put in the chat at the beginning of the presentation as well. And so the ebook that I wrote with Higher Logic really dives in a lot more deeply on crafting value propositions. So if you are like, all right, we need to one, we don't have any, or two, we do, and they're decades old, download this book. It's super duper easy to use. You can print it as a PDF, kind of go through checklists and things like that. But also I have today's presentation available for any of you that would like to download it from my website. I know I spoke briefly about Association Rockstars at the beginning of the presentation, but if you are looking for a community to really hear from other association and chamber leaders from across the world, join us. We have a conversation on Facebook, usually twice a month. It's a video, so that way if you miss the live, you can go ahead and catch it. If you're not on Facebook, we also do have a website that shows it on YouTube, and we have a podcast as well. So if you have like iTunes or anything, if you look up Association Rockstars, you'll be able to hear those conversations. And if you are a reader, don't worry, we also have articles. So that way all of our interviews are recapped in articles. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the Association Rockstar interview series, please do so. And if you want to join us in our Facebook group, I'll go ahead and approve you. But we'd love to see you there. If you have any questions, we've got a few minutes left. I wanted to make sure I left time for questions, or if you wanted to go about your day a little earlier, I love when that happens as well. Perfect. Yep. So if you can download the presentation, you can download the ebook. I know there is a recording, And that will be sent to all of you as well who is registered. So if there's any questions, throw them in the chat.
Hey, Amy, we're getting a lot of thank yous. I
see
don't
that.
see questions. Oh, KD said tutorials on higher logic. I'm not sure if that's a question.
I don't know. That is a great question. What is, Katie, go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper. Are you looking for tutorials on higher logic? So if Higher Logic is an online community platform. If you go into their, I want to say they have like an education section, they do have a lot of tutorials. I actually am not a Higher Logic user and none of my organizations are. So Katie, if you need to reach out to them directly, that'd be awesome.
Okay, and then there was a follow-up. Thank you, Amy. I need a refresher on survey creation. So perhaps offline following up. There was also one, Lori was asking, do you have any favorite value props that you have seen by other chambers?
So here's the thing. I was doing some digging before this presentation and I haven't found a ton, but I will say that the Vail Valley, no, I'm trying to think of what their name is. I'll put them in the chat. Vail
Valley Partnership?
Yes, partnership.
Chris Romer. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think they've done some of the best value proposition work that I've really seen out there. And so I would click around and go see, especially if you are a travel focused chamber or organization, but also the economic development value propositions that they put together to attract new businesses into town has been really great. So Vail Valley Partnership is probably one of the best that I've seen. I do think they may be able to up-level their social media use of value propositions, but if you're looking in general, check out their website. They've got some really good examples.
Great, thank you. And then Nan said, is the value proposition the same as the member benefits, or should it be summarized similar to a mission statement?
There you go, Nan. Thank you. Great question. So you do kind of want to summarize it. So your member benefits, again, are going to go like those bullet. And so if you're able to really summarize it and again, create it into a statement, create it into an emotion, create it into more of a feeling, then just you're going to get to network with other business owners. Like again, what's the value of networking with other business owners? And really think about that end result. Like what are people actually taking and implementing in their businesses because they've interacted with you. So you don't want it to be just that nitty-gritty list of networking events, conferences, in-person trainings, directories. Really think of what was the end result from someone being listed in that chamber directory and what did their business or individual benefit from. That's your value proposition.
Thank you. And then Beth said HUG, H-U-G, is available. Lots of tutorials.
Yep. So HUG is the online community for Higher Logic.
Got it. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you. I think, again, lots of thank yous, lots of praise for your presentation today, which is great. And I think that's all I'm seeing as far as questions go. Any last questions before we let Amy go here? Again, lots of thank yous. Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you again, Amy. This was a fantastic presentation. I know lots of tips and takeaways and valuable information. So really appreciate you taking the time to present to our group today. And thanks to all of you who took the time to listen and engage. We do have another webinar coming next month. So be on the lookout. Topic and presenter TBD, but we'll be posting about it. You'll receive emails and then on our social media accounts as well. And we hope to open registration for our Summer Institute sites next week. Stay tuned. Again, you'll receive more information. So thanks again, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Thank you.